Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you to a new European Bauhaus event from Belgrade in Serbia. The title of our event is Stories from Serbia. Our aim is to show to the European audience and of course the audience here in Serbia that there are many interesting citizens' initiatives, projects in the area of urban planning, of heritage, of environmental activism that have already adopted the principles and values of the new European Bauhaus that was introduced last year. It is our pleasure to welcome our friends here as a live audience, and of course the friends and viewers that will be watching this event on the very vast platform that was created by the new European Bauhaus initiative in Brussels. The festival of the new European Bauhaus started today. It will last until June 12th. And we, as far as we know, are one of 200 events, projects, exhibitions that are now going on all over Europe. Since the main events are happening in Brussels, we are happy to announce that we received a special video address from the Secretary General of Europa Nostra, Snežka Kvalić-Mihajlović, who is in Brussels today. And I would like to invite you to listen to her address at the beginning of this event. Can we have the video, please?
Drage kolege I prijatelji iz Srbije, dear colleagues and friends from Serbia, what a joy to greet you from Brussels, from La Gare Maritime, the exceptional venue of the very first New European Bauhaus Festival. Europa Nostra is an enthusiastic supporter of the new European Bauhaus initiative, not just supporter, but official partner, one of the very first 13 partners of this initiative, and we are also participating very actively in the new European Bauhaus Festival. Why La Gare Maritime was chosen to be the venue of this festival? Because it is an exemplary project of high-quality adaptive reuse of an existing impressive industrial building in Brussels, a former freight building. And that building has gone through a real renaissance. It has been transformed into a thriving urban hub through the use of sustainable, environmental friendly solutions. In fact, the construction of this building has been filled with a timber construction, an impressive, very beautiful timber construction, the largest timber construction in Europe, and La Gare Maritime has become a pride of the city of Brussels. And Europa Nostra is also very proud because this project is one of the prestigious laureates of the Europa Nostra Award, European Heritage Award. They got that in 2020, and you can now understand why the European Commission decided to choose exactly this location for the festival. As you all know, this initiative has aroused a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of expectations from the world of design, architecture, cultural heritage, artists, science, technology, students, universities. They have all been invited to get involved, to participate in the co-creation of this initiative, to make it a true European movement. And the person who invited us to engage is nobody else than the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She launched that initiative in her State of the Union speech in September 2020. I must admit that we have all been surprised because we didn't know that she will come up with that project. But we were pleasantly surprised, and particularly we were very inspired by the fact that the European Commission decided to sort of highlight the fundamental cultural dimension of the European Green Deal. The European Commission and its president realized that the success of the European Green Deal does not depend only on technology. That this is not a sort of just a technological transformation of our life, but it is also a cultural transformation of our life, that it is basically requires a change of our mindset and of our attitudes towards the living environment, and that the players from the wider cultural world, including cultural heritage, ought to become protagonists of that vital and indispensable green transformation of our cities, of our villages, of our urban and rural environment. For all this reason, Europa Nostra got enthusiastically engaged in various ways in this project since it launched in September 2020. We have aligned all our various activities, from policy, advocacy, to the award scheme, celebrating excellence, and also campaigning to save endangered heritage. The first key contribution we have made for the new European Bauhaus is the publication in March 2021 of the groundbreaking European Cultural Heritage Green Paper. In this paper that we produced with colleagues from ICOMOS and also with the support of the Climate Heritage Network and also the European Investment Bank Institute, our important partner, we have demonstrating that cultural heritage is a fundamental resource which needs to be used for the successful implementation of the European Green Deal. And we demonstrated that all chapters of the European Green Deal, from the renovation wave to the renewable sources of energy, to the transformation of our food industry, production of food, and also to the way we are promoting mobility in cities and countryside for citizens. This is a very important document, and I would like to invite Europa Nostra Serbia to examine it very carefully and also to spread it as widely as possible as part of your own engagement in the sort of new European Bauhaus initiative, because this is something which is also very important for Serbia as a EU candidate member state, while Serbia needs also to speed up its work on developing a green agenda, a truly green agenda, that you also participate fully in the shaping of that agenda by putting cultural heritage at the heart of the green agenda of your country, of the entire region, the Western Balkans, like in the rest of Europe. All these messages were also incorporated in the Venice Call to Action, an important document that was the result of the European Cultural Heritage Summit that we organized last September in Venice. I'm delighted that my dear colleague and friend Vesna Marjanovic, Secretary General of Europa Nostra Serbia, took an active part in person of our summit, and that she could contribute to our discussion in Venice. Again, I invite you to study this document and use it as inspiration for your own work. A little bit later, in November last year, we also took active part in organizing a series of side events during the COP26 meeting in Glasgow, and we became also forcefully engaged in the Climate Heritage Network, a global network that was born 2 years ago, again putting all the various cultural heritage stakeholders together and to sort of mobilize their contribution to climate action. And it is in Glasgow that we have also been appointed as the regional co-chair for Europe of the Climate Heritage Network. Once again, I invite you to be an active part of this growing network that's covering all continents. We have set up a new European Bauhaus task force. We have also participated in the selection of the winners of the new European Bauhaus prizes organized by the European Commission. All this to say that I believe that there is a lot of work, have already done, and a lot of best practices that would be a useful inspiration for the work that Serbia needs to do in that front. And I really congratulate Europa, Nostra, Serbia for having organized this side event, and clearly, stating that also our country representation in Serbia, my also country of origin, is prepared to be a partner and even recognized as partner of this initiative.
Thank you, Snezka. And now we move back to the event here in Belgrade. I would now like to introduce and also announce that this event today has been organized together with our friends and partners from Nova Iskra. Nova Iskra is one of the most innovative initiatives here in Serbia, with a vast number of projects, an enterprise that has been dedicated to sustainability and environment since, I believe, from the very beginning, from their foundation. And first now we will have a look at a clip that will show some of these projects and programs, and then we will continue.
Međunarodna saradnja, može slobodno reći da kažem, čini negde srž ono što predstavlja Nova Iskra danas. I uopšte rad na projektima međunarodne saradnje su započeli zapravo od samog osnivanja Nove Iskre, još od 2012. godine. I mogu samo reći da upravo učešće u tim međunarodnim projektima je, a pogotovo u programu Kreativne Evrope, nam je pomoglo da zapravo da razvijemo Novu Iskru i učinimo je ono što, delimično ono što je ona danas. Tamo već 2006. godine mi počinjemo projektom koji se zove European Creative Hubs Network, odnosno Europska mreža kreativnih hubova. Ovaj projekat je negde bio jedan od ono što se kaže milestone za razvoj Nove Iskre, jer je zapravo ne samo realizovao aktivnosti, ne samo prepoznao ono što zapravo kreativni hubovi jesu i koji su njihovi problemi sa kojim se učavaju, već je zapravo napravio mrežu organizacija od koje će kasnije zaista nastati Evropska mreža kreativnih hubova. Realizacijom ovog projekta koji je finansirano, odnosno sufinansirano kroz program Kreativna Europa, mi smo danas uspeli da zapravo napravimo mrežu kreativnih hubova koji ne samo da pomažu jednim drugima kroz članstvo, već i razvijaju javne politike, aktivno sarađuju sa Europskom komisijom, koje i Europska komisija upravo ovu našu mrežu danas vidi kao uticajnu mrežu kad je u pitanju domen kreativnih kulturnih industrija. Drugi projekat koji smo nekada sa zadovoljstvom realizovali, zaista smo ponosni jako na njega, jeste projekat koji se zove Made in. Zajedno s našim partnerima smo realizovali projekat koji i mapira pre svega probleme koji se tiču razvoja zanatstva, odnosno zanatlija, i da negde podigne kapacitete zanatlija da zapravo uspeju u današnjem svetu. To smo radili kroz pre svega mapiranje zanata i zanatlija koji su delimično ugroženi i koji su pred opasnošću da izumru, a zatim smo ih pomogli kroz raznu saradnju sa recimo mladim dizajnerima da negde osavremene svoje usluge i svoje proizvode. da sličnim stopama smo krenuli kada smo realizovali projekat Food is Culture. To je još jedan od projekata koji je sufinansiran u programu Kreativna Europa, gde smo zapravo hteli da se bavimo temom hrane kao kulturnog nasleđa. Dakle, šta je to što povezuje evropske narode kada je u pitanju hrana, kako sagledamo hranu i da li uopšte vidimo kao deo našeg kulturnog nasleđa i šta zapravo sagledavanje hrane iz te pozicije kulturnog nasleđa zapravo nama pomaže, odnosno pomaže u tim nekim problemima koje danas imamo sa hranom, a to je činjenica da kažem, konzumiramo hranu na neadekvatan način, da je previše bacamo i slično, i da delimično način uništavamo i biodiverzitet. Ovaj projekat je realizovan kroz partnerstvo sa Slow Food organizacijom iz Italije i zaista smo puno od njega naučili o tome kako i na koji način i kroz polje kulture zapravo možemo uticati i pre svega podizati negde svest naših građana i korisnika projekta o tome kako nasleđe predstavlja hrana. Dosta ovih projekata, kao što sam objasnio, zapravo se negde kreću tom negde raskreću između kulture, kulturnog sektora i ostalih sektora, što je nama jako bitno jer smatramo da zapravo kulturni i kreativni sektor mogu svojim dostignućima da zapravo pomognu i drugim sektorima. I to je nešto što je, baš se Nova Iskra zalaže, dakle, da kultura i zapravo nije nešto što je samo sebi dovoljno i negde zatvoreno, već da upravo ta snaga koju kreativni i kulturni sektor imaju, možda kroz način razmišljanja, kroz metode koje koriste za rešavanje problema, mogu da pomognu nekim drugim sektorima.
Now I would like to invite Ivan Manojlović, who is a curator, art historian, and now a program manager here in Nova Iskra, to tell us a little bit more about some of the future projects that you have been organizing and are planning here.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you, Vesna. Actually, I would like to also go a little bit back and just to make reference to the videos and the project that we choose to show in the video. Hopefully everybody will have a chance to see it. But actually we choose to show three quite important projects for Nova Iskra and for the community that actually we are gathering, or the community that usually quite eager to see what we actually the projects that we show, the exhibitions that we make, and so on. So we choose to show three projects. One of them is the project that we formed an amazing community on a European level. It's a community made of European creative hubs. And this is a huge potential, a community of organizations that are primarily dealing with sustainability issues, with sustainability topics, and so on. So we had an opportunity and, let's say, quite privileged to be one of the founders of this network. And right now this network is one of the networks and agents very close to the Brussels Commission that is quite active in a policy level concerning the state of arts and culture and all the other policies that actually come from European Commission that regards this topic. So this was like a milestone for Nova Iskra in a way that right now most of our projects and the partners come from this network. And this is a huge, let's say, help for what Nova Iskra is doing, because we have a lot of partners there. We found a lot of solutions and we address them and for advices and so on. Then we choose to show another project that was quite important for us, because it was like also a project that somehow got Nova Iskra on the map of cultural heritage. It was called Made In, and the project was dealing with cultural heritage in the domain of artistry, in the domain of artisan, and we tended to map the existing artisans, the existing that already that still exist in Belgrade, and we try to actually get in touch with them, to hear their story, to hear their problems, and to see in which way culture or arts or innovations could come and help them actually strive and still exist. I must say that we are lucky that most of them are still existing. It's not, let's say, our fault that they're still existing, but it's nice to see that, you know, this kind of old artisans are still operating and on that level and could manage actually. And the third project that we are especially proud of is called Food is Culture. It's also one of the projects that are dealing with the topics of cultural heritage, but from the viewpoint or having a topic as food. We believe that all the problems that we have regarding food or food production, for example, monocultures, for example, industry approach towards food production or also food waste, these problems could not be addressed unless we take them on the cultural level. And this is something that, let's say, what we learned during these projects helped us build new ones. And I must say that for me, as an art historian, when I heard about this initiative, New European Bauhaus, I was quite edgy because, you know, mentioning Bauhaus for art historians is like, you know, you broke some sacred rule. Because you know that Bauhaus was this kind of avant-garde school, and it was a movement in many areas of artistic expression, such as painting and architecture and photography and so on. But in a way, when you look at the values that Bauhaus was promoting, such as accessibility or equality or intersectoral cooperation, these kind of qualities is actually the ones that, you know, the European Commission wanted to promote with this initiative. In a way, this is something that we feel that is very close to us, that actually what we are trying to do is in our Iskra is to see and to somehow make quite new projects that are dealing with certain topics connected to our society, but, you know, having in mind that each time trying to see what culture and art can do to help. And I must say that looking at the values that was promoted in the new European Bauhaus, it was quite easy to say, yeah, we agree with this, because there's no other way around. Because when you see that all the problems that we want to tackle or that we are trying to address with the projects, these problems are not easy, they're very complex in a way. So you don't have to read a lot of them, you can simply go outside, you can smell the problems, you can see them, you can touch them each day. So sometimes they're called so-called wicked problems because there are like several reasons for it. One of them is that these problems doesn't have easy solutions. That's one. Usually a problem doesn't have one solution but rather more. And these solutions can often come with a heavy social impact. For example, some solutions require to change a total of society behavior. And we know that, you know, changing behavior in society in Serbia is, you know, in the domain of, I don't know, unreal, I guess. So some of the problems are quite hard to find innovative solutions because they are usually surpassing the boundaries of the organizations and the institutions who are supposed to be dealing with this kind of problem. And the logic conclusion is that if you want to deal with these issues, deal with this problem, you have to behave intersectorial. And many initiatives that come from our partners, from the networks, for example, are dealing with the potential of cross-border or cross-sectorial cooperation between cultural sector and other sectors, and even having a question of so-called cultural spillover from cultural sector to another, for example, to industry, to business sector, and so on. So what can we learn from artists, the way they think, the way they organize, the way they see or address problems that we can use to tackle those issues that are burning issues of our societies. So, yeah, even issues such as food or issues of similar topics can be addressed through the lenses of culture, because then audience that you address with, about these problems are seeing them differently than, for example, if you have a scientist or someone who's saying to you, okay, but we have these kind of parameters, we have data, and that's it. So, and then you go home, that's fine, but what do you do with this? So, but when you see or you're addressed with the problem through the lenses of culture, then you react with your guts and not your mind. So this is totally another way of looking. So yeah, maybe for the first.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. The next project that we want to present will be the very important and interesting long project that has been going on for the last 10 or 15 years. It will be presented by Jelica Ivanovic, who is an architect, an architectural historian, and also a young lady who is spending much more time in many important cultural heritage sites around Serbia. Lately, it is mostly in the region of Negotin, where she is leading a summer school camp that is focused on the restoration of the Negotin wine cellars. So let's hear her story.
The Summer School of Architecture in Rogljevo, which is one of the compounds of wine cellars in Negotinska Krajina in the east of Serbia, had started in 2018, and ever since we had summer schools pretty much every year, with the exception of 2019. We have started the Summer School of Architecture as a project in 2010 and had worked previously in Bač and then started working in Rogljevo in 2018. And we wanted to work on restoring historical structures, working with traditional materials, which is basically mud, timber, stone, the materials that are typical for rural architecture. And since these cellars have been protected as a cultural property, we thought that it would be a good place to start working and basically continue the work that had been previously done by the regional restoration camps, by the Cultural Heritage Without Borders, and also to kind of add to the project that has been initiated by the regional, by the Institute of the Protection of Cultural Monuments of Serbia, the project of restoration of the wine cellars. We had also wanted to work with our colleagues, work with students, so young professionals, but not exclusively with them. We also wanted to work with basically whoever wanted to had any interest in this heritage. Enthusiasts, people who own buildings and facilities that have similar materials and similar problems, to work with craftsmen with these old techniques and technologies that are basically disappearing, and to provide a way of reinstalling them, reintroducing them, and also figuring out in the process how to preserve the buildings in the site. Which is extremely valuable for the local community that basically does not have the means to do it. It's those are the villages with elderly people that don't have the financial means to restore these buildings, which is now getting more complicated and more expensive to do. Sometimes it seems a bit difficult, especially when you're immersed in this project on working on site. But nevertheless, the local community I have to say my experience is they're responding pretty well. What I've heard from them is that they're the happiest people when the summer schools come and the workshops are being done in the village, because that's when the village is alive, and they like interacting with these young people from all over the world. It is some kind of, they're proud of their village, and they're proud that they're getting this international attention, and that everybody who comes, basically, even though many of the structures are ruined, some of them have been devastated with inadequate interventions, nevertheless they are beautiful, and everybody who comes to see them and work on them is just in awe when they step and see the village. The locals, especially in Rogljivo village, they are working with us. Actually, they are providing electricity, giving us tools if we need something, helping us get the mud, for example, when we need to do the mud mortars. They are providing assistance, which in so many cases I would have not been able, for example, to organize something if there wasn't for our neighbors in the local community. So they're much appreciated by the team of the summer school and the camps that have been organized there. The huge problem, which I hope is going to be resolved within this and next year, is the lack of basic infrastructure over there. So it is a place that I have to say has been forgotten by the state authorities for many years. It's a municipality that suffers from depopulation for decades now. And the road infrastructure, sewage, water supply infrastructure is a problem over there. However, there is a project which is financed by the European Union, which is called EU4U, that is dealing with this at the moment. They are still working on the projects, and I hope that this is going to be realized and implemented within next 2 years. However, I hope that they're not going to forget us after these projects are done, because without the focus and the attention of, let's say, international heritage community, but also tourism community and professionals in general who are dealing with various aspects that are important in this case, I hope they are going to continue to be interested in this area, and through that interest we will be able to continue to work on the physical aspects of preservation of the cellars, because through projects of tourist organizations, through projects of heritage organizations, either from formal or informal sector, some funding will be provided, and it will be much easier for us to work on our projects. And also, I hope that these projects in the long run are going to bring back some people to their communities and their ancestral villages.
After the region of Negotin, we are now back here in Belgrade. And it is my pleasure to introduce a very important publication that has received an important award here in Belgrade at the Architectural Salon. And let's have a look at this video clip as well.
Mi se trenutno nalazimo u Centru za kulturnu dekontaminaciju u CZKD-u i ova knjiga i ovaj projekat su nastali u produkciji CZKD-a, čiji je zvanični moto mesto gde ljudi dolaze da se osjećaju slobodno. A drugi moto je mesto gde se susreću oni koji se inače ne bi susreli. I čini mi se da i ova publikacija i ovaj ceo projekat predstavlja to sa namerom i da je vrednost i ove knjige i čitavog ovog poduhvata što o javnom interesu iz ugla urbanizma, odnosno u okviru dometa urbanizma, govore stručnjaci različitih profila. Taj pogled na promišljanje urbanizma izuzetno značajan, da to nije više struka i profesija koja može biti, da kažemo, jednodisciplinarna, nego da se mi urbanizmom, razvojem grada, prostornim razvojem grada, prostora, upravljanjem našim prostorom i našim životima moramo na taj način baviti, a to je integralno, sveobuhvatno, sa različitim pogledima koji se susreću, koji se prepliću i samo na taj način možemo doći do nekakvih zajedničkih prostora koji su kvalitetni za život svih.
Ceo taj projekat je bio usmeren ka aktiviranju profesionalne zajednice i da se čuje u stvari stav profesionalaca u odnosu na ono što se nama danas dešava u gradovima. A ono što se dešava u gradovima to su mnogobrojni problemi u urbanom razvoju koji su u stvari posljedica jednog tranzicionog procesa u kojem se mi sada nalazimo. Jer mi, od kako smo ušli u demokratske promjene 2000. godina, mi smo prihvatili jedan potpuno novi okvir, razvojni okvir, koji podrazumeva demokratsko odlučivanje, ali i prihvatanje logike tržišnih mehanizama, što je drastično promenilo logiku proizvodnje prostora u odnosu na ono što smo mi nekad imali. I sada, pošto je ceo sistem krenuo da se menja, zakoni, okvir koji u stvari podržava prostorni razvoj je napravio jednu pometnju i u toj jednoj pometnji su i profesionalci postali zbunjeni, međutim, mnogi drugi igrači koji su dobili priliku sada da učestvuju u tom procesu su počeli veoma beskompromisno da traže svoje mesto, naravno vođeni profitom kapitala, i to je napravilo ozbiljne probleme u čitavom tom razvoju. Znači, to je bila u stvari ideja da mi pokrenemo taj projekat, da se bavimo tim problemima, ali pre svega da budemo usmereni ka profesiji, ka onima koji učestvuju u tom procesu, jer smo smatrali da ojačavanjem njih i ojačavanjem institucija iz kojih oni dolaze, mi možemo da zaštitimo tu profesiju za koju smatramo da ima u stvari jako, jako plemenitu ulogu, a to jeste zaštita i odbrana javnog interesa u prostornom razvoju.
Ova publikacija je nastala između ostalog da neke koncepte kao što su javni interes ili održivi razvoj ili učešće građana u stvari rehabilitujemo i da pokušamo da njima damo nova značenja, odnosno da ukažemo na to da su u svakodnevnoj praksi isprani i da se njima manipuliše. Poslednjih godina, a u stvari decenija, došle do te transformacije institucija, institucije nisu samo organizacije, već pravila po kojima te organizacije deluju i očitavaju se, odnosno gledaju se u regulatornom nekakvom okviru i oni su u međusobnoj zavisnosti, drastično se transformišu. Način na koji se transformišu je toliko ubrzan i nije nastao evolucijom naših postojećih. Tako da ljudi koji treba da ih primenjuju i organizacije koje treba da ih primenjuju nisu obučene i nisu to sada rešenja koja su primerena našem kontekstu. Taj uvoz rešenja pod pritiskom pristupanja Evropskoj uniji, transformacija tog regulatornog okvira, uvođenja rešenja instituta različitih vrsta, je dovelo do toga da je naša profesija zbunjena. Drugo, otvorio se ogroman prostor za delovanje onih koji imaju moć i nestajanjem javne sfere, odnosno pre svega kompetentnih i nezavisnih medija koji su posrednik između građana, odnosno javnosti i onih koji donose odluke. Znači, građani moraju da budu informisani. Čak i da bi nešto mislili, da bi mogli informisano da misle. Ako nemamo medija, ako ne postoji ta nezavisna javna sfera u kojoj se mišljenja razmenjuju, stavovi, ideje, diskutuju, onda mi u stvari imamo jednu masu kojom je jako lako moguće manipulisati.
Ono što je važno reći to je da se logika proizvodnje prostora sa tim promenama koje su nastupile, znači te društveno-ekonomske promene u koje je ušla naša država kao sistem, one su napravile jedan novi okvir za planiranje, odnosno za stručno delovanje. Međutim, sama struka u institucijama u kojima se nalazi je inertna. Znači, te promene se ne mogu desiti preko noći. Ali ono sa čime su se oni suočili, to je da je stvarnost daleko brža i daleko aktivnije reaguje u odnosu na prilike koje im se ukazuju u prostornom razvoju. Dakle, struka je zatečena i samim tim je oslabljena. Znači, jako je oslabljena i ne snalazi se u tom novom ambijentu. I mi smo smatrali da je podrška tim ljudima, znači tim našim kolegama koji sede u institucijama, koji treba da proizvode planove, koji se ne snalaze u tome, je neophodna. Mi to naravno radimo i kroz edukaciju, mi to radimo kroz nauku, kroz istraživanja, znači kroz razne oblike našeg delovanja, znači u onome što je naš domen. Znači mi to pokušamo da podržimo, ali ovaj projekat, odnosno ova publikacija je bila usmerena upravo ka tome da se obratimo struci koja sada treba da razume te nove okolnosti, da je ohrabrimo, da prihvatite neke nove okolnosti, a to jeste odlučivanje zajedno sa građanima, odnosno sa svim zainteresovanim stakeholderima koji bi trebalo da budu pitani u prostornom razvoju, odnosno da se zajednički dogovaraju oko to javnog interesa.
Promene su napravljene i to na dobro, zato što je sad stasla jedna mlada, nova generacija ljudi, različitih profila, različitih disciplina, obrazovanja, koji razumeju da ta borba za pravedan i bolji i lepši grad je konstantna. Znači, tu nema odmora i to mora da traje. Broj tih organizacija i ljudi je veći, oni su se povezali i svi se mi u stvari međusobno snažimo. I mi iz akademije, i ljudi iz civilnog sektora, i ljudi iz javnih institucija, pa i iz privatnog sektora. Znači, svi oni kojima je u stvari stalo do unapređenja kvaliteta života, odnosno uslova za život u gradu.
I would like to invite Ljubica Slavković, an architect and urban planning researcher, to present this interesting publication.
Thank you, Vesna. Thank you for the invitation and for this chance to talk about this book, which is actually, as my colleagues, or I would prefer to say partners, said in the video, just one small step of a big long-term project, or better say, long-term efforts that we are making. To put a long story short, in order to make our cities better, our urban planning practice better, our quality of life better. What does that mean? We have started with this project in 2019, and at the time, the context in which we found ourselves was pretty much similar to what we have today, but that's when it kind of started to rise, that we had conflicts literally on every step of our society, of our space, in our country. So whatever construction was made, the urban planning project, plans, whatever was happening related to spatial development, ended up with conflicts in the streets. And there were, nowadays, and back in 2019, our civil society is getting stronger, so we already had several organizations, civil society organization, activists and so on, who were dealing with this conflicts, trying to help citizens to raise their voices and to defend basically their surroundings. But our approach, what we saw at the time, was that we wanted to do something a bit different. So we wanted to add some, let's say, add another approach to this dealing with conflicts, and not to deal with them at the end of the process when they occurred on the streets, but to deal with the entire process and to, first of all, map and to look into how did these conflicts occur in this process of urban planning, and to try to act in these early stages of, let's say, conflicts, of when they are actually sparked. So we started this long-term project, or collaborative governance, which consists of three aspects, so to say. One of them is research, complex research. The second one is public debates, because what we saw at the time and what is still present today is that, first of all, these three sectors, public, civic, and private, are not really communicating among themselves. And further on, we feel that we need to build our culture of dialogue. So public debates is the second aspect, and the third one is informing. How do we get information? How do we get how do we get knowledge that is based on arguments, that you can really rely to, let's say, because our media, we have, let's say, problems with most of the media that are being highly censored in a way. So we have started this website called Interactive Urbanism. And since 2019, we have made a lot of, as I said, research, debates, publications. We have mapped where decisions are made in urban planning, but not just looking at, this is one of the examples of a chronology, not just looking through the prism of urban planning per se, but also through our legal framework, spatial manifestations, and so on. And this is something we mentioned before, how we feel that our urban planning has to be practiced and taught in this integral manner from all kind of different disciplines. And that is one of the steps, one of the foundations of these publications as well. So in this process from 2019, we realized that one of the foundations of this conflict, so to say, is in the term public interest. How do we define this term? How do we deal with it from different aspects, from different professions? How do we defend it or define it before law? What are our rights? What are our obligations? And at the end, how can we make all of this better? So this publication is basically about that we have professionals from different aspects, urban planners who are practitioners, who are researchers from civil sector, from academia, urban sociologists, people coming from law, pravnici, legal experts, spatial planners, and so on, dealing with this topic, starting from redefining this topic. How do we think about public interest? How do we define it? What does it actually mean, as my colleague said, because we find this to be the first step in how do we deal with public interest in our surrounding, all the way to through creating policies and this process of creating strategies, all the way to creating simple but very concrete recommendations. How can we improve defining and defending public interests in the realm of urban planning? And this is the title of this publication, In Search of Public Interests, the Realms of Urban Planning. I would finish with that in this first circle.
Thank you, Ljubica. Now I would like to invite you to watch another video introduction about a long-standing battle that we had in the recent years, the famous case of the project in the Belgrade Fortress that we informally now call the Gondola Project. It, in our opinion, is an example of how a very energetic campaign that includes networking, joining forces together, could in fact make a difference, even when it comes to very strong opposition from the part of the government, a lot of investors' interests as well. So let's look at a very short clip that actually shows how Kalemegdan looks today, and then we will continue our conversation. Now it is a really great pleasure to invite Višnja Kisić, a very young woman with a very long biography. So I can just mention a couple of things that she has been doing and is doing at the moment. She is a researcher. She was a heritage activist and still is, but in this particular case, she was leading this initiative here in Serbia on behalf of Europa Nostra. As I said, a heritage professional, an educator as well. So Višnja, I know that you spent a lot of time during this battle that we cannot say that we won it, because we should rather say that this is just paused at the moment. So we don't yet know what will happen probably in the next couple of months or weeks. We were all waiting for a new government in Belgrade to be established, and that will happen as we speak. So can you tell us what is your experience? How did you, when this whole, let's say, public campaign or opposition among the citizens started, as a relatively small organization here in Serbia, what were the first steps, and what do you think was the crucial, let's say, breaking point where you could see that this whole activity and activism made sense?
Thank you, Vesna, and thank you all for listening to us. I would also, as other speakers, go a bit kind of just backwards with the introduction. So for years before the cable car project has started, which is in our campaign against it actually, which is in 2019 in March, I've been leading the organization called Europa Nostra in Serbia for 8 years then. And what we did, as in many other cases that my colleagues were mentioning, there's actually this long-term effort and struggle to, in our case, protect different monuments, also to kind of encourage some really innovative heritage methodologies, to educate many young people, to also educate heritage professionals, to try to educate many decision makers, to put heritage as a topic in media and social networks. So, and many of the projects that we have been doing have been actually realized in this kind of a bit of advocacy, a lot of education, quite a lot of research, and then kind of putting forward certain suggestions, certain policy ideas, and practical kind of ideas. And then when it came to cable car project that was announced at that time, there's just those moments in which your previous methods don't work, basically. We didn't have anyone to educate at the moment, or we did, but through a different process. I would say we also didn't have really kind of a group that we could kind of collect quickly. There was no project planning, there was no budget related to project as such. And there was actually just this feeling, okay, we have to react now and we have to kind of save this place. And for all of you who haven't been in Belgrade, Belgrade Fortress is this kind of very central place from where Belgrade grew 18 centuries until it became really a city that surrounds it. Amazing views to the confluence of Danube and Sava River, very important cultural landscape as well, very important natural surrounding that is still very well preserved. So basically there was something that we really cared for, both me personally, but then also people around me. And I think at that moment we really felt, okay, we as professionals really have a call for this kind of to do something. And I think what we did at the moment, I would call many of those things actually winning the battle, even though there's really kind of a question mark whether the cable car will eventually be built or not. But winning in a sense that we really gathered an amazing number of professional associations, civil society actors, activists, not only in heritage and museum field, but really urban planning, tourism, culture, archaeology, science. So environmental activists, and so on and so forth. So there was no initiative recently that really put such a strong front of very different actors that kind of most of the time didn't really collaborate with each other because either there was no good reason or there was no like such a threat as this one was. Then on the other hand, we were talking a lot about sectoral approach here, interdisciplinary approach, and so on. And we've been trying to do kind of that through all the projects that Europa, Nostra, Serbia was doing. But actually in this very project, it really made a difference that we came from so many different kind of knowledges and perspectives and that we could unite these forces. So basically that was a big, big effort. This sort of network is still functional today in a sense that it's not like a formal group, but an informal group of actors who meet and who have been collaborating to stop other kind of urban planning urban projects and construction projects that are equally shabby, illegal, non-reasonable, non-sustainable as this cable car was. And I think the other kind of winning of the battle was actually the fact that cable car and the Belgrade Fortress were really on top of media articles and news for months and months to come. And that basically from then onwards, there's this kind of initiative of journalists to really call us, all of the people that were involved, to actually report on cultural heritage, to report on the destruction of cultural heritage, which just really wasn't the case before. And I think it was also a really good kind of possibility to put forward some of the messages of kind of why heritage is important in this kind of sense of how do we make a future out of certain resources that we inherited from the past, and why kind of Belgrade Fortress as such is just one symbol, one representative of much wider struggle for, I would say, dominantly common resources and public resources, basically common goods that belong to all citizens. And kind of what happens if the participation and participative governance and inclusion just don't work when they are practiced through the governmental and institutional framework, when actually they are just performative and not giving a voice and agency to citizens. I think this project was really, or the whole initiative, the campaign, really showed, okay, if we are not included, we include ourselves. We basically say, okay, this is kind of the red line, and from here we are defending this because we care for it. And I think all of those things are kind of important milestones. For now, there's also one more important milestone, and that is that one of the environmental organizations that was RERI, that was kind of a central partner in it, actually filed the first lawsuit against the government on environmental issues as a third party, and that is basically kind of a precedent in legal framework in Serbia of someone who is from civil society being able to actually say, well, I'm an interested party and I'm objecting this sort of construction or destruction of public good. We still don't know what is going to happen. I would say what kept us all going, and actually here in the audience are many, many people who have been kind of day and night dedicated to the fight against the cable car project. But I think what we started with is this idea that we go as if we will win. So basically there was no moment in which we were like, this doesn't make sense and they are stronger than us, and probably then we just, give some kind of speak to media and do something, but just in order to feel better about ourselves. So it wasn't that. It was really like we are giving all the effort that we can give at the moment, like writing reports, talking to officials, going in media, and all of those kinds of things to actually try and defend this public good. And I think in that we all have really succeeded and won, at least for the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Vishnya. And I think now that we had this first round of presentations, we can all conclude that all these stories that we just told have actually shown, maybe through practice, through some kind of need, that the approach to these issues when it comes to urban planning, saving the public spaces in cities, preserving the environment, the cultural heritage, that obviously we need to have this intersectoral approach, interdisciplinary approach, and of course the main reason why we are all here, we need to assemble all our resources and make a network of organizations, mostly civil society organizations, but all other individuals, private organizations, let's say well-intentioned individuals from the public sector, to actually join our forces and try to prevent wrong projects, not only here in Belgrade, but all around Serbia. I think it's very important also to say that usually when we had these initiatives or battles or any kind of activism in this area, the government usually using, of course, the vast media resources that they have, they usually say it is development and we need to develop the country, this is how we perceive development. But I think all these examples have shown that the development in the 21st century with this new consciousness about the environment is something completely different. So this is why this European Bauhaus program that Europe has announced and is now supporting was something that we just recognized as a way to incorporate all our activities under this umbrella. Now I would like to just make another round before we conclude about future citizen engagement and the way how all of you see participation of citizens in your own fields. We will start with Jelica again, with a short video clip, and then we will continue among ourselves here.
The project of the summer schools exists for 13 years now. And through that experience, we have built a network of alumni that is 150 people at least. The formal way through which the application process is done is that we announce it every year in English and Serbian, and of course whoever wants to can apply. One needs to send a CV, motivation letter, and fill in the form, and then depending on the number of applicants and our capacities to organize everything in the villages, we decide 10, 15 people. That's usually the maximum that we can work with. The participants are different people from all over the world. We have had them from all the continents of the world. They're students of architecture, art history, and all the relevant disciplines in this case. Some of them are doing their compulsory practice for their faculties. Some of them are just coming to, work with these materials that they did not have the opportunity of seeing and working within their respective faculties. But also we have people who are from other disciplines not related to architecture necessarily. Journalists, designers, cooks, which are usually the people who own some property that is either built of mud or timber, and they have problems, they're struggling with that, they cannot find the craftsmen, and they are pretty much aware that as the owners of the property, they will have to organize some DIY activities and do the restorations and reparations on the buildings with their friends and family and maybe some craftsmen. But then also we are working with the craftsmen, both local and from Serbian region so far. And some of them are coming to basically learn these techniques, and some of them had the experience or have been employed by the old construction companies that are now completely gone. And it is a bit easier to train them and to show them how to basically just readjust the techniques that they know and work with these materials, when not to implement the modern materials, and it has been a very valuable experience for us.
Thank you, Jelica. Even you here in Nova Iskra, you have a lot of very different activities, but still, even the ones, the let's say partners, organizations, or entrepreneurs that are working in your workspace, co-working spaces, Europa, Nostra, Serbia is one of them, are also part of your network. So what are the mechanisms that you employ to have this kind of participation? Do you find that people are more connected to the space that you have provided, or maybe through some projects that you have envisaged? So what would you share with us as a good experience?
Yeah, actually that's quite a good question. It's a good question because it actually relates to definition what Nova Iskra is, and since the beginning of its foundation. And I would say the answer is both. We are, as an organization, as a complex one, we lean on this side of having a space, having a platform, which is a physical one, as a co-working space. And this platform itself brings a majority of, let's say, people and participants in sometimes our programs, some in our activities. And it creates sort of a good ground for actually those who are using the space to communicate and to collaborate between them together. And this creates a different kind of energy and different kind of relation if you're working with someone for a longer time and you're having someone over coffee each day, and suddenly you start to speak and you see that you have something in common, maybe you can cooperate and so on. But on the other hand, the projects that we do, the educational program that we do is something that was embedded in Nova Iskra since the beginning. And I also think that we are also recognized as an organization by it as well. So in a way, what we are actually employing, especially in the projects department and the educational one, is that actually whatever we do, there is only one core element that is always has to be there, and this is innovation. And this is something that been driving us since the beginning, I would say, and of course for me as well since I joined Nova Iskra. And I must say that, for example, the projects that we're going to do, that we can announce, those that actually very well relate to the values defined by the new European Bauhaus, are the projects that are trying to deal with the issues of accessibility. One of them is actually, let's say, a good story that continues to what Ljubica was saying about urbanism, about the question who has the right to make decisions in the urbanism. So we partnered together with several other organizations from Europe, and the question is, for whom do we build our cities? And if we say that we build for our children, then the question is, why do they not participate in making decisions in urbanism? So actually we are very happy to start a new project that are going to try to make innovation in terms that we're going to develop a digital tool that will enable school children from, let's say, 7 till 14 to actually make decisions and to participate in urban planning. So this is kind of a innovative ideas and solutions that drives us to participate in such a projects. And another one that I would like to maybe let's say speak about and mention is the project that we are is quite, let's say, maybe an extreme. It's a project that uses a speculative design as a methodology. It's kind of a pure fictional thing, but it's not total like a fiction in terms of literature. So speculative design uses or tries to imagine future, but based on the data and the scientific facts that you have today. We gather young creatives from different fields, from the architecture, from let's say photography, from marketing and other areas, and we got them together, like 25 of them, and the idea was that they should imagine our future without social networks. So that's why we formed like a platform, like a club. It's called Post-Social Media Club. And because most of our connections and the social interactions now are dependable on the social media, sometimes we go into extremes, like they're so immersive in terms of metaverse, and we know that we are creating something which is not good. We can assume this. So the idea was to see what are the let's say strategies that we can act in the future when these social networks are die. This was like an idea to suppose so, or what are the strategies to actually be disobedient in this kind of a metaverse that is already building for us, and we don't have any influence over it.
Can middle-aged people join this project as well?
Yeah, you can join the club. You can join the club.
My question for Ljubica now, because it was somehow suggested by Ivan. In this book that you have created, there are many interesting questions. Some of them seem maybe even strange that we have to ask them today, but obviously we do. And one of them that I liked the most was, who do the urban planners work for? So what would you say? Who do they work for, or who should they work for? I suppose we all have an idea who they should be working for. But what were your, let's say, findings or proposals that you came up with?
That's a really good question and a really good article in the book, so I recommend to everybody. Well, that is all, of course, connected to the main question in the book, and that is in search of public interest. And that is what you said before when we talk about development and stopping the development, and no, this is done in the name of progress and so on. This is done in the name, these all projects that Vishna mentioned and so on are done in the name of public interest. But what is public interest? And that is, if we define that, then we can define for who the public planners work for, because urban planners. Because urban planners are supposed to work for in the name of public interest, and they do work in the name of public, but we don't have that. That's where the problem is. So the other question that has to be asked when we talk about the role of urban planners is, what is their power? What power do they have today? Where are the decisions made actually, and what is it that urban planners do? And that is something also out of which we created this book and all of the other things we're doing. And it's related to participation as well, because we as professionals feel obliged to improve our profession, the entire urban planning profession, seen in this integrated way. And that's why I'm coming back to all these procedures that ends with conflicts, but what happens before. And we also have this responsibility to, as Vishna beautifully said, we are sharing knowledge, we are advocating, we are responsible to public to be these mediators, to present them with information, to empower them in order to be able to participate in all these procedures, processes, and so on. So we as professionals, urban planners, we work for the public, for citizens, for the growth of our profession, and also for those who are making decisions. And how do we combine all of that? That is something we need to work on.
Thank you. Vishnya, my question for you is, after this experience that you had with cable car project, and also the experience that you had while you were more active in Europa Nostra, Serbia, as a cultural heritage organization, how do you see the place of cultural heritage and organizations dealing with heritage in these this new era, so to speak? Would you say that heritage has, even though we have a lot of reasons to be unhappy, but would you say that we did actually achieve to put cultural heritage somewhere in the public discourse, in the discussion about public policies, and of course sustainable environmental policies? Do you think that we actually did manage, not only here in Serbia of course, but we did manage to put it more into mainstream than it was the case before?
I would say yes, partly. And we still need a lot of work to do. Primarily because, well, now my very personal kind of position is that I'm dealing with heritage for years and years now, both in civil society but also in the educational sector and so on. Because for me, heritage is really about the future as well as about the past. And I think this is where heritage sector, at least part of it in Europe, has been really successful in putting these messages forward. That actually cultural heritage does provide us with so many different ideas of how to live and how to negotiate and so on. So for me, kind of it is a way to a bit denormalize the society as we live in today, to kind of say, well, this is neither normal nor natural, nor it has to be this way, because it used to be many other ways as well. So in that way, it can be all those possible things and all those possible futures that we can imagine and work for. So for me, cultural heritage is this sort of inspiration that we can change the world as we go. And I think this is something that we need constantly to remind ourselves, also as heritage professionals and activists, so that when we talk in public and when we make participative projects, that it's not about preserving X or Y as such, but it's also about much wider ideas of what kind of power relations this particular heritage or epoch represents, how people used to live, how they used to feed, how they used to, work out relations with other than human beings, which I think is super necessary at the moment now. I also think cultural heritage sector has been good in, and should be better, in putting spotlight not only on urban centers, which I think there's an inclination or like a hegemony of kind of megacities and urbanism, and basically also in the European Bauhaus, if you look at the visuals and all of that, it's super urban, super modern, and again, developmental. I think what cultural heritage does is reminding us of all those places that actually do feed us, that provide actually life, that nurture life, like the rural areas, the forests, the rivers, and all of those kinds of things. And I'm really proud that in Serbia there's quite a lot of activists, both coming from cities, but also locals in their own territories, defending their rivers, their mountains, and so on, from developmental visions of someone who is sitting at the governmental positions. So I would say in this sense, there's a lot of positive stories. But yeah, we should always think, okay, what is that is at the moment on the margin? But we should actually put it in the center, including different voices that have just been marginalized for centuries, such as female perspectives, working class perspectives, children's perspectives. And I think all professions really could learn from this sort of taking bits and pieces from history in order to be better informed for the future.
Thank you. Well, it seems that we are now almost at the end of our event. I would like to thank the audience here in Belgrade and everybody else that will be watching this online. Before we say goodbye, I would like to invite everyone here in Serbia especially, but also in Europe, to continue this network, to continue this discussion, and to find, to be part of finding new solutions for a new era or a more humane living on this planet and in Europe as well. For the end of this event, we will hear another address, the second part of the address of our Secretary General, Snezhka Kvadlich-Mihailović, and from me, Vesna Marjanović, here in Serbia, I wish you goodbye and thank you.
This week in Brussels, I must say there is a wonderful ambiance here in La Gare Maritime. Many people came from all over Europe to Brussels, but also many people like you organize side events in various cities. So there is a sort of in spite, of course, of the very difficult times that Europe is living, and you know, all the developments that we are all facing with the war in Ukraine, we still could feel a positive vibe and positive energy when Europe comes together, where the creative people from all fields and also from the field of education come together. That is the way to face all these challenges and to sort of respond to the climate emergency, to sanitary emergency, to democracy emergency, with all the threats to democracy and the threats to peace. Again, new European Bauhaus, with its fundamental values, the values of beauty, sustainability, inclusiveness of our living environment, is the way forward. Europa Nostra took part in a series of plenary conversations on innovation, on education, also on the way we can contribute to the recovery of Ukraine once the war is over. And also we organized a high-profile side event in the town hall of Brussels, La Grande Place, historic World Heritage Site in Brussels, together with the city of Brussels and the mayor, in the presence of the mayor of Brussels, and the very important collaboration with the European Movement International. We organized a side event with a very symbolic title: Fostering Peace and Solidarity, Beauty and Sustainability as core values of the new European Bauhaus. We had debates on sustainability, on beauty, and it ended up with a moving concert for peace by young Ukrainian musicians. Dear colleagues and friends from Serbia, we are convinced that this initiative ought to be to spread its wings also outside of the European Union. For the time being, it has been discussed, it has been promoted within the European Union, but we believe that it is an essential initiative to be also implemented within the EU Western Balkans agenda. It is so relevant for all the policies that needs to be developed in the Western Balkans as part of the European path and the path towards integration into the European Union. And I warmly recommend you all, and I already congratulate all of you who will be speaking in this side event, but also to use the arguments and the narrative of the European Bauhaus much more forcefully as part of your campaigning for better policies and also your fighting against development projects that are definitely negation of the principles of the new European Bauhaus. And we know, you know very well, and I know it as well, that alas, it is happening in Serbia and in the rest of the Western Balkans far too often that development projects are promoted, not just promoted, but implemented in a way that they have a lasting negative impact on cultural heritage, on urban planning, on well-being and quality of life of the citizens, and particularly large cities, big cities like Belgrade and Novi Sad in Serbia, and particularly endangered by such types of practices. So, as part of your mobilization to sort of stop this type of developments, the principles, the experiences, the best practices of the new European Bauhaus initiative can be extremely helpful for you. And you can also very much count on Europa Nostra to support you, to help you to use also the principles of the so-called high-quality Baukultur developed following the adoption of the Davos Declaration in January 2018. And these principles are now very much incorporated as part of the principles of the new European Bauhaus initiative. And also principles developed by our colleagues from ICOMOS during the European Year of Cultural Heritage that promote high quality principles for any EU investment which has an impact on the built environment. That means that also in a candidate member country that is receiving a lot of funds from the EU, you should be insisting on implementing quality principles and as part of this project that are funded by the European Union and implemented in Serbia. So, all in all, I just want to wish you a wonderful event, a meaningful debate, and just go on, involve as many partners as possible, dealing with culture, with art, with environment as part of also the new European Bauhaus movement in Serbia and in neighboring countries, and count on us and count on me to support you in that process. I wish you a wonderful event, and I look forward to hearing about the conclusions of your conversations.